Welcome to the MD Podcast with me, Martin Hartley. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at Imagine Consulting. We're a professional services consultancy specialising in the financial services sector.
You need to make sure that you're working in an environment that's healthy with people who are respectful and interesting, and you need to feel valued. If you need to take time for something, you take time for it.
The Imagine podcast will offer interesting, insightful and frank discussions on the biggest issues facing directors and divisional leaders. The show aims to inspire and educate future leaders by telling the career stories of those of today. I can't wait for today's episode. I'm joined by Clare Smallwood, who's a lead PMO at HSBC based in Sheffield. Clare, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hello, very good, thank you.
Good. For those that have joined before, obviously you know the format. It's the past, the present, and the future. We'll dive into the depths of Clare's work experience and history, and look at some of the decision-making processes that were made throughout. And then we'll end with some quick-fire questions towards the end, which is obviously my favourite part of the show. So Clare, take us back to the beginning. Where are you from?
Despite being based technically out of the Sheffield office, you can tell by my accent that I'm from London. I am from the sort of east side of London, and my dad's a black taxi driver, and grew up in a suburb, sort of on the edge of London. So very working class family. That's about it, really.
Nice. So he had to do, he was around in the days when they had to do the real qualification of knowing all the streets on the back, like the back of his hand.
Absolutely. And every time you're going anywhere, he still asks you where you're going and then wants to give you street by street directions. Yes.
Brilliant. Okay, cool. And then what was your education like? What was it like growing up? Where did you go to school? What was school life like?
So I went to school within walking distance from where I lived. The school I went to at the time wasn't considered to be a very good school. It was, just your average sort of comprehensive, I guess, and very sort of mixed sort of groups of people there. So very diverse sort of people from, not very well off backgrounds and people from very well off backgrounds. So I guess that led to tensions at times with your haves and have-nots. And at the time it wasn't a good school. It is now. One of my friends is actually ahead of year there now, and has instilled his views on things. Now it's a very good school, but at the time that I went there, it wasn't really a great place to be, I suppose. I signed up initially to do A-levels there, but after the first year decided that wasn't for me. So I dropped out after the first year. At the end of the summer holidays, told my mum I wanted to be a singer in a band, and she said, "That's great, but you're going to get a job and give me some housekeeping first." So she marched me off to college the same day and signed me up for business administration course at college. Yeah.
Nice.
So where it all started.
Okay, all right. So there was a big influence from your mother there, which we can all relate to these days. So understood. And then where did the career start then? Where did your career journey start, and what led to the financial services sector?
So initially, I started out just signing up for an agency. One of the first jobs I ever had was working for a legal professor, which was quite interesting. He headed up a training department, and then he left and took me with him to start up his own sort of training academy. And that was quite cool because it was just a very small company. It was just like 3 of us, and I did everything from hooking up PCs and choosing furniture to cold calling for training courses. But I'd always planned to just work for a year and then go traveling. And I stuck by that when I joined the company with him. I said, that's what I'm going to do. So the first job I ever got in financial services was actually in Australia on a working holiday visa. And I worked, I was temping in Sydney, and got a job working for a technology team for Westpac. So that was by accident.
Yeah.
Just signed up, and I used to sit in this horrible sort of waiting room where I lived at the time in Sydney, and wait for the phone to ring and call into agencies every day, is there any jobs available?
Better than picking
Um,
strawberries though, right?
I did pick tomatoes for a while in Bundaberg. It's
Everyone
not
has.
it's not fun. No, it's not fun doing that. And yeah, so that was quite a good experience working in Sydney. And then when I came home, again signed up with an agency, had a bit of experience by then, and when I was temping, I temped for a while. I worked for lots of different kind of companies. Communications companies, PR companies, and eventually settled into a role in ING Bearings.
Yep.
Um, and I think it was not long after the merger with ING, I was working as a team secretary for a corporate finance team. So definitely back in the days when there was barely any women in kind of those sort of corporate financier roles. Let's
Yep.
say it was almost all men in the business roles and women in the support roles. Um, and we used to have evening secretaries that would come in at sort of 6 o'clock and take over from us and be there all night, working on documents to get out for mergers and acquisitions. It was quite pressurized sort of environment.
Yeah.
So yeah, I joined there as a temp initially, and then converted to perm after a while. Um, and then I guess because it
Let's
had
just
just
let's
gone
just take
through.
a pause there. So then,
Yeah,
so we're looking at the so you've had a number of different roles in different organizations, obviously been traveling, went to
yeah,
Australia, had all that experience. I
yeah,
suppose at that point, that was the equivalent of, somebody else doing their A levels and going to university, but you were getting on
yeah.
the job life experience, understand a real good core skill set. I suppose it's like, at this point then, did you make any conscious decision that, like, okay, well, I've experienced these kind of companies or this type of industry, that I want to go in said direction, or what happened then?
Yeah, I mean, it was quite a big step for me to go back to having a permanent job, because I was traveling for a couple of years on and off, and the main reason, I guess, really for converting to being permanent at ING was that out of all the industries that I'd worked in, the people actually were the nicest. I always had thought, if I'm going to do an office-based job, I'd want it to be in a creative industry, so I'd gone for sort of temporary jobs in the comms and PR sector, and actually I found the environment not really that great.
Hmm.
There's a lot of egos in some of those sort of
Yeah.
industries, and even in corporate finance. Most of the people that I worked directly with were genuinely nice people. Obviously, there were some drama queens and, like, lots of pressure that people had to deal with, but still, a lot of people were just normal people getting on and doing things. And um and also, from a sort of compensation perspective, the financial services industry was paying you to do the same job but better,
Yeah.
you know. So
So
that was
some
definitely a factor at that age.
yeah, there's some key learns there to just draw out that, that when people are making decisions on careers or to join organizations, uh, you spend more time with these people than your family most of the time. So it's important to ensure
Yeah,
that you get along with them. It's a nice environment, it's a supportive culture, and obviously
absolutely.
compensation does play a part in that.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. And at the time, um, I guess also I was buying my first flat, you
Yeah.
know. Prices obviously have gone up a lot since then, but even back then, it felt like things had been like ramping up
Jumped. Yeah.
price-wise, sort of for a couple of years, and we sort of felt like it was the right time to get on the property ladder and sort of build a base for ourselves. Yeah.
No, no, it makes complete sense. I think there's also a really nice story behind this, is that you don't have to go to university to end up with a great career in a good organization, you know, doing something that you love. So people shouldn't necessarily feel pressured that that's the route they have to go down all the time.
Yeah, and that pressure's definitely been there since, I don't know, since I left school. It's changed quite a lot. When I left school, there were a lot of people who would just go straight from, you know, GCSEs or A levels into work. And I think we went through this long period of it kind of being assumed that everyone should go to university, and it's not necessarily the right environment for everyone. Yeah, I'm more of a summary person, I
Yeah.
guess. So when it came to writing long essays about, fringe theatre plays that we'd been to see, and it's just, I decided when I was doing my levels, that's not for me. I don't want to write a 3,000 word essay about this fringe theatre play that I barely stayed awake through.
No, 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 absolutely. So then you've got a base skill set now. You find yourself to Merrill Lynch, which is obviously Bank of America Merrill Lynch now, or back to Bank of America now. So, I mean, tell me
Yeah.
about your time there and how was that?
So that it was a funny period, really. So I left ING because boss um my two bosses were being made redundant. And so my boss at the time, who was a really lovely guy, said, "Look, I can make sure that you keep a job here if you want, but equally, it's not going to be the job that you signed up for." And I said, "Yeah, actually, maybe it's a good time then to move on." So I joined Merrill Lynch in a completely different sort of role. It was doing sort of audio recordings that got hooked up with European research presentations and got put out to market. And so I worked with this external company to get the recordings done, and it's just completely different from anything I'd ever done before. And it was quite fun, and it was quite interesting. I was at the time I was interested in doing web design, because that was, it was a new thing back
Yeah,
then,
yeah.
sort of having websites, and I did sort of manage like internal like intranet sites and things, and that was something that I thought I would move on to do. But then September 11th came along, and one of the buildings, I think, was impacted Merrill Lynch, and I think around the same time we might have had the tech crash as well. So there was a number of sort of things that happened, and actually I was only there 8 months, and my role got cut. My whole team got cut. So sort of found myself in the position where I was made redundant twice within the space of a year. Um, and I guess some people might have found that to be a negative thing, but for me, um, I'd found that maybe I wasn't enjoying it as much as I initially thought that I would. Um, and the hours were long. It was sort of early starts because of the sort of markets sort of thing,
Hmm.
and the media files needed to be done early. Um, and my husband at the time, partner, wasn't enjoying his job either. So actually, we took a decision at that point to sell up. So I went back to temping for a while at first, and yeah, we just decided to take some time out. So we sold our flat, put everything in storage, and took some time out again. Um, so
I think
that
there's
was,
some points to draw from that as well. Obviously,
yeah,
people that have got good careers and work for good organizations don't often highlight to the rest of the world that you have to go through some pain. You have to, things
yeah,
don't always go according to plan. You have to be resilient. You need some thick
yeah,
skin, especially in our industry. You've got to
absolutely,
you've got to
yeah, yeah,
bounce back from setbacks. So
yeah,
thanks for highlighting that, because that's crucial. There'll be a number of people out there in organizations as we speak that didn't get the promotion they want, or didn't get the job they
oh
want,
yeah,
or have just been let go from job. Look at the big tech layoffs at the moment. There are hundreds of thousands of people going through what you went through, and it's difficult. But you've got to show some resilience. If you need to take time like you took time, take time. But if not, get back straight on the horse and keep going.
yeah. Everyone's situations is different, and I mean, when it happened at Merrill's, it was back in the day where you know, you got the phone call, you were asked to go up to X floor to speak with HR, and that
With a
was it.
box.
You were gone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
literally within sort of half an hour of getting that phone call, I was out of the building. And that's quite shocking
Yeah.
when it happens. But also back in the day where within 2 weeks you could be back in another role. So that's what I did. You know, I went back to what I knew. I went back to
Were you
doing
still in
PE
London at this
roles.
point? Still there?
Yeah,
Okay. And
yeah.
you sold up but stayed in London.
Yes, we
Hmm.
did. Yeah. So yeah, sorry. So initially, I went back to temping. So I went back to what I knew. You know,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
went back to doing PA roles, and I temped probably for about 10 months, I guess, before we we had everything organized. But yeah, about 6 months into the temping, again working long hours, just getting kind of bogged down with not enjoying life, I guess. And you know, still young, and we just decided that it was a good opportunity with me not being in a permanent role, to take some time out. And my husband got us a secondment to Singapore, so we spent a little bit of time there before we went traveling again. And you
Not
know,
still had the bug.
yeah, I think, and also sometimes you just need to take some time out to reflect on what's important in life. And,
Yeah.
you know, and if you just keep going from one job to the next without thinking about what you're doing, um, you know, you can find yourself in situations that you where you're just not happy. So, yeah, I think
And
there's
is
no
that where
harm
you
in it.
found yourself? You found yourself. Were you not happy? Why were you not happy?
Um, So actually, in the role that I ended up being in, it was a good role, and I think I was enjoying that. But my husband wasn't wasn't enjoying his role. Um, Initially, when I started temping, I was in a role that just wasn't good, and in an environment that wasn't healthy. Lots of shouting, lots of slamming doors, and I wasn't there for very long. And then the role that I was in, when we sold up, um, it was actually quite fun. It was working with the global communications team and working on a sort of rebranding project. So that was quite a good role. Um, but still, because of the fact that I wasn't in a permanent role and my husband had this opportunity to go and take a secondment and take some time out, and have a sabbatical, we decided it was just a good time, you
Hmm.
know. Plus, I had two lots of redundancy payments um, in the
Now the
bank.
truth comes out.
So, so opportunistic, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And I always wanted to travel, you know. So yeah, I
That's
always
good.
had a long
Are
list of countries to work through.
you still working your way through 'em?
I'm on 80, and
Good
I'm
effort. Good effort.
yeah, yeah.
That was great. You didn't. Well, my son would enjoy a conversation with you. He is fascinated with travel, and he's loving football at the moment. Obviously, football being a global sport, and all the different
Yeah,
players from
sure.
different countries coming to the Premier League. He's like, oh, where's this one from? So
Yeah,
yeah,
where are they? Yeah. When I was a kid, I had a big, one of those big solid jigsaws. It was a map of the world,
yep.
and it was like my favorite jigsaw. So
See, times
yeah,
have changed now. He's got a talking, spinning, video playing globe. Yeah. Same thing, just completely different
yeah,
concept.
yeah,
It
yeah.
tells you everything you need to know about these countries as well, which is great. Um, okay, cool. So one thing I do want to touch on there is obviously you mentioned the importance of taking time out to assess like whether you're happy and what you're doing, and like how would you give people advice to do that? And obviously it's not one size fits all, but can people not quit their job and do that? Can they take a week off and do that? Does it take longer? Like what's your
Yeah,
advice?
I think everyone's different, but I definitely think having at least a good 2 weeks off every now and then from your job to take time to think about how you're balancing your life, and you know, are you getting time to do things that are interesting to you, and do you enjoy working with the people that you work with? You know, I've got quite a few friends that are teachers or work in the national health, and for them their work is a vocation, and it's something that you like totally, if you want to dedicate your life to that, then that's like, that's a real life choice. But I think working in other industries, and I think the financial services in particular, you have to make sure everything stacks up. So, you need to make sure that you're working in an environment that's healthy, with people who are respectful and interesting, and you need to feel valued, like,
Do you
just sort
think
of
we've got
basic.
better at that as a sector?
Yeah, I think so. I
Yeah, I
do.
agree.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. There's a lot less shouting and slamming doors now.
I know. Yeah, yeah,
Good
yeah.
thing.
I've been there. Not the one slamming the doors on the receiving end. So
Yeah, yeah, I mean, when I first went back to temping after Merrill's, I worked in a role, um, and that was just a daily occurrence, just constant shouting and swearing and slamming doors and being rude, and it's not good for
yeah,
anyone
it doesn't help anyone, does it? Like
no.
people, it causes a stir. People feel on edge. And
Yeah,
to be honest with you, my genuine belief is that even the person doing it doesn't want to be doing it, and it's probably and it's definitely not good for them either. So
yeah, yeah, definitely.
that
It's
that
not constructive,
no,
like, doesn't inspire anyone to want to help you or behave in that way.
I think the industry as a whole has definitely got a lot better, which is good. But
Yeah,
that's a nice segue to UBS, right? So you had UBS, Barclays, and now
yeah,
HSBC. So just want to spend some time on your role of transitioning from going from job to job, not necessarily knowing exactly what you want to do, to now being in a job that you love in the business management and then the PMO world. Like, how did that
yeah.
happen? Like, tell the listeners, so people are listening that are in your position can do the same if they want to.
Yeah, I think, there's a good career path there for people from an administrative background to get into change management or PMO sort of roles. There are lots of sort of synergies with the skill sets.
Hmm.
So, when I went back to UBS, so I was temping and traveling between UBS for a while, and I worked with some great people at UBS. And I was working as a PA at quite senior level, um, which was interesting. And quite often, then you naturally just get involved with broader sort of things. So when I was at UBS towards the end, I was involved with the Disability Awareness Network. I was secretary for that, because my boss chaired the network. So that was interesting. And you get involved in sort of, naturally, you become involved with more sort of business management activities.
Yeah.
Um, and then there was a woman who I had worked closely with when I was temping, who had moved on to Barclays. She was just a brilliant person to work with. She was, yeah, really good fun, supportive, energetic. She was just, um,
And that makes a difference. Think about what
yeah,
you just described previously, and then think about what you're describing
absolutely.
now.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you can have a couple of those in each team, I just think it makes the day fly by. It makes life so much more enjoyable.
Yeah, she was a real good leader. She just was always positive and energetic, and even if she was having a bad day on a personal level, on a professional level, she would always just focus on, this is what we need to do. We might have challenges, we might have problems, but this is what we need to focus on to fix those and to get things done. And so I'd really enjoyed working with her, and we'd stayed in touch. And there just came a point in time when there was an opportunity there, and I've been doing what I've been doing for a long time. So I thought I'll have a change and go and work somewhere different. Um, Went to Barclays, which also was in Canary Wharf, where I'd never worked before. So I'd been always based in the city. So it was a completely different sort of environment, really, working over there. And so I moved over. It was a PA role with business management added on the side. Um, and gradually that progressed into me taking on more and more, and getting involved in lots of different things. And my boss was very supportive and encouraging, and she always made sure that you know, I was challenged, but also that I was supported, which I think is important as well. But yeah, I mean, in terms of people moving into doing that kind of transition, there are so many synergies with being a PA and being in the sort of change management function. You know, if you're a good PA, you're good with people, you're good at prioritizing, you're organized, all of those things translate into being good with, you know, PMO type roles and project management roles. You know, that's what
Yeah.
it's all about, really.
And you've now been in the sector for a number of years, so you had
Yeah.
the industry knowledge as well.
Yeah, yeah, and that helps. And also exposure to, I guess, working with kind of senior management and
Yep.
understanding what priorities are for people who are working at that level and how busy people are. It's
And
all
how to
about,
effectively communicate at that level.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what it's that's one of the most important things really is how you sort of message things and sort of being concise and making sure that your reports are, you know, articulate
Yep.
and understandable and not full of acronyms that no one knows what they are, which we're very good at
Yeah, which is
HSBC.
the entire sector.
Yeah, yeah.
And so who gave you a real shot then? I know you said it was kind of on the side. Like who said, right, come on, leave that PA stuff behind. You're in this lane
Yeah.
now.
So that was my boss that I moved to Barclays to work with, Leslie. She was she was just an inspirational person on every level. I mean, um she decided she was going to do an Ironman at the age of 50, and she couldn't even
Amazing.
swim. She learned
Wow.
how to swim and like when she was training for it. So she was, yeah, really inspiring and generous, and she was great to work with.
Why? What made her so great though? What were the key attributes? You said obviously generous and inspiring, but why did she inspire
Yeah,
you?
it was that energy that she always had, and also you you always felt that she was fighting for her team, you
Yeah.
know, and you knew that she would fight for you, and that made you want to do your best for her. So that, I think that's one of the key things with her. But also she was genuinely interested in people's stories. So you didn't feel like when you had a one-to-one with her that it was just all about her. You know, she cared about people and she wanted to know what was going on in your life. And if there was ever anything going on, it was always, you know, family first. If you need to take time for something, you take time for it. So it always felt like it was give and take. You
Hmm.
know, you worked hard and you gave a lot, but you got a lot back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She just sounds very authentic.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. She was
Nice.
great.
Okay. So then how did you do? How did it go? Obviously very well because
Yeah.
she's still there.
Yeah. So Barclays, I I learned a lot very quickly, I guess, and I got promoted a couple of times within the space of a few years. So initially, I held myself back because I didn't feel like I was ready, and I guess I don't know, like for a long time, I always felt like because I'd come from that administrative background, I always felt like everyone else is more experienced than me. You know, I didn't have the qualifications, and I'm not very good at, I guess, saying I'm good at something. So I didn't want to put myself forward and then feel like I've got to work long hours and I've got to, you know, sort of lose my sort of work life balance, because that's always been important to me. But it got to the point where I realised that I was holding my own, and actually my boss said, "You're doing the work anyway, so
Yeah.
just like do it,
Just sounds
just
like
go."
you're being very British.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. I just, yeah, I even now, like I've been, as you know, I've been singing for the last few years. I sort of picked up doing singing again. And if someone says to me, "You a good singer or can you sing?" I'm really uncomfortable saying yes. It sticks in my throat. I don't want to say it.
Most people that
It's a
are good
strange
at
thing.
stuff are like that though, aren't they? I think it's
Yeah,
a nice trait personally. Um, but yeah, I think it's a very British trait. I think, like, if you go to
yeah,
the other side of the pond, I lived in America for 3 years. They have no problems telling you what they're good at,
Yes, no, that is true. And
which
I
isn't
think
isn't a bad trait to have either, by the way.
no, it's just with moderation, I suppose. Everything with moderation, and also being, I think, too self-depreciating, you know, isn't always a good thing. And I know that I got told off for it recently by someone where I sing, and she's like, you're always putting yourself down. And I said, yeah, but it's part of my charm to be self-depreciating. She's like, no, stop it.
Well, as long as it doesn't interfere with your confidence, that's kind of the
Yeah,
thing, right? So it's like
yeah,
when you
that's
mentioned
true.
about work, if
Mm,
you don't back yourself, then other people might not back you either. Where,
yeah,
if you back yourself and you demonstrate that and add value, then other people will. So, and it's the same in singing. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think with Barclays, if I hadn't had that support, then I wouldn't ever have pushed myself forwards. If I had a different boss, I wouldn't have ever progressed out of doing what I was doing,
yeah,
because I wouldn't have had the confidence. I wouldn't have had that self-belief.
yep. So then why the switch to HSBC?
So there, my boss retired, and there's always organizational change within financial services
Hmm.
organizations. So there was a lot of change at the time, and also I had been through something personally from a health perspective. So I had a bit of personal stuff to deal with as well. So everything had changed, I guess, and it seemed like um, another good opportunity to step back and take a bit of time out. So yeah, it was about a year after my boss had retired, um, that we had this big organisational shift, and everyone was invited to apply for their roles. And I just decided, actually, do you know what? After everything that's happened over the last couple of years, I think I probably would benefit from taking some time out. Um, and again, it had got to that point where the balance had tipped the wrong way in terms of work-life balance. All the organisational changes and the kind of growth of the team had completely changed the dynamic of the team from when I joined. So I wasn't necessarily keeping under control in terms of the work-life balance
Yeah.
at the time, and it was a good time to take some time out. And
And you're
yeah,
still in London at this point, but
yeah,
went to HSBC London because obviously we know,
yeah.
obviously, you work in with HSBC and imagine working with the bank for coming on 20 years now. We know there's a big play to ensure that everyone knows that it's not all about London. But why HSBC? Why?
Um, Came down to people again. So I had a friend who works at HSBC, and I knew that they were quite into sort of flexible working and people working from home. Um, and um, and I was going into having a contract role, which as a PMO I hadn't actually done at that point. So I needed to set myself up as a limited company, which was a completely new experience for me.
We are going back
Um,
a few years now, aren't
yeah,
we?
yeah. So again, it just came down to people,
Yeah.
and something came up, and I had an introduction from someone who put me in touch with someone else, and again, I joined as a contract resource, not knowing how long I would be there for. Um, and in the event, I was there for about a year when I decided to move to the Peak District. Um,
Nice.
and we hadn't, I guess, we probably had made that decision a little while before we moved, but it took a little while for everything to sort of, fall into place. Um, But yeah, after about a year of being a contractor at HSBC, my role officially got moved to Sheffield, and I was in the process of doing up this derelict Victorian house
Amazing.
at the time, and spent 6 months sleeping on my driveway in my van. Without, cooking on a camping stove in the house and stuff. Um, and so, yeah, we had about 6 months where we couldn't even move into the house, and I was still
Yeah.
based in London. And then once we had a kitchen and a bathroom, I started going into the Sheffield office.
Nice.
Yeah. So I was there then for about another 2 years in that role, and really good team. Everyone was really lovely, and got to know Sheffield a little bit, but not a lot. Not in the office every day. So still exploring Sheffield. It's like lots of different neighbourhoods and areas, and so
Yeah.
it takes time to get to know it. But I really like it, and also I climb, so it's a big climbing location. Sheffield, there's a few climbing walls there, so we quite often will go in at the weekend and go climbing. Um,
Whereabouts in the Peak District are you?
Buxton,
Yep. No, 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 no,
yeah,
no. Yeah, I know it.
yeah,
I know you've got
yeah,
a nice, fully renovated now, finished?
yeah.
Ish. Are
Not
they ever?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It doesn't ever stop, does it, with houses? But we did the last sort of little bit and got it pretty much got it waterproof now.
That helps. I've
Yeah.
we we've done 2 renovation projects, so I feel your pain. The first one, my youngest was 3 months old when we went to move in.
Oh
The
my
day we were
God.
meant to move in, we were both sets of parents, and then my mother, my mother-in-law, and my wife just looked at me and went, "We can't stay here with a baby." So, but obviously I was still working in London, so Jem, my wife, went back to her parents for a few months, and I stayed and lived in there. But I didn't have any electricity at the time, so
Oh God.
I feel your pain.
Yeah.
We've been there, but all worthwhile in the end, right? It's
Yeah,
you have a big
absolutely.
sense of pride. So
Yeah, definitely. And again, in terms of like project management and sort of, getting things done,
yeah,
like
yeah,
house renovations. Like if you can renovate a house, you can manage a project.
yeah, 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 yeah. That'll
You've
test
got,
you.
yeah, you've got to deal with all these different personalities and lead times and dependencies.
Completely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Nice. Okay, good. Um, what's I've had I was going to say, what's the leadership style like at HSBC? Everything you've said, I can relate to, because I know a lot of people there, obviously, from working with them for a long time. I've had a lot of the senior leadership team on the podcast as well.
Yeah,
Everyone says the same thing, and when you get, not exactly the same, but when you get patterns of what people say, then it really brings true. So it's great, because I know most of the people at HSBC are amazing, really, really talented individuals. It seems like a great culture, great working environment. So what are the key points of the leadership there that you would highlight as being good?
yeah. I think there's an energy at HSBC, and that's one of the things that really appealed to me when I first joined. I went and attended the sort of in person, obviously this is pre-COVID, in person induction day, and it was just very energetic. And really is a global organization,
Oh
so
yeah.
you're always speaking with people from different backgrounds and different cultures, and I think people are respectful of that as well. And I think that kind of, I think, makes it an inclusive sort of feeling place. Yeah, everyone I've worked with has been good fun, and generally people are open, and yeah, it's I think, I mean, I've always been in technology since I joined HSBC, so it's slightly different from the environment I was in when I was at Barclays, when it was a business change team predominantly and
Mhm.
cross-functional change. So you do get that added layer of complication with being in a technology area, because it's a huge, organization. So there's lots of sort of different hierarchies to navigate and different sort of governance. But ultimately everyone is just, trying to do their job and get
Yeah.
on, and people are respectful and pleasant, and yeah, it's a good environment to be in. And the other thing that's appealing, which I know I mentioned before, is that it was kind of quite early to the table in terms of the like hybrid working, I guess is what we're
Yeah.
calling it
Yeah,
now.
they were an early adopter, weren't they?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, the flexibility to be able to work from home sometimes and be in the office sometimes is, I think, is really important now, especially because for me, I'm living in Buxton and travelling into Sheffield. I mean, it's a lovely drive on a sunny day in the summer, but in the middle of winter when it's pouring with rain or foggy, or and it's dark, I don't want to be doing that commute every day.
No,
So
makes sense. Makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, we'll wrap up the
Mm.
segments there. But it's just left is the quickfire question round, which is my favourite part. So, what's three pieces of advice you would give your younger self or the next generation coming through?
I think have confidence in yourself,
Yeah.
um, is something I would tell my younger self. Um, Probably recognize what is inside your span of control and what isn't, and don't lose sleep over things that are outside of your span of control. Um, and be nice to everyone, and respectful to everyone, because um, life's just much nicer when you are. But also, you never know when you're going to come across those people ever again.
Yeah. Agreed.
So
Nice.
yeah.
Okay. And what's three resources that you use or would recommend for self-development? Books, podcasts, websites, publications.
Um, the One of the things that's helped me the most with keeping myself balanced and in a good place is Vedic meditation. So I would really recommend that to anyone who's interested in that kind of thing. Before I went back actually to work, before I started contracting with HSBC, I did a weekend course in Vedic meditation, and that's really helped me. It helped me kind of stay balanced, and it helps me think clearly. Um, LinkedIn obviously is great for connecting with people, and also for training. I did some online training with LinkedIn recently. And for anyone who's at HSBC or any of these big sort of financial services companies, I guess a lot of them have lots of in-house um, training available, and it's not always that easy to find, and you don't always um, think you have time to do it, but it's important to make time for that kind of thing. And HSBC has a great resource internally, so I use that as well.
Nice. Good. And then last but not least, who's your role model and why?
Probably the woman that I talked about,
Yeah.
who sadly isn't with us anymore, um, would have been absolutely, and still is, my role model, just outside of work and from a professional perspective. She was one of the best people I've ever had the sort of privilege of working with. Really, she was yeah, always energetic, always passionate, and wanted to go out and live life to the full, and but also at the same time was kind and generous. Yeah.
Lovely. Brilliant. Okay. Well, Claire, thanks for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure. Appreciate you joining me and sharing your insights. If anyone else is listening and wants to pick your brains, and obviously I'm assuming they can reach out to you on LinkedIn. But thank you and good luck with the rest of your career. And to the listeners, thanks for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed listening. If you've enjoyed it, please pass and share the pod, but don't tell Crouchy's legal team I said that.